Laura dedicated years of her life to caring for Pedro, her disabled husband, while facing her pregnancy and daily challenges. But when her intuition led her to install a security camera in their home, she never imagined what she would find. What the footage revealed turned her act of love and sacrifice into an absolute nightmare. Discover how a simple suspicion uncovered a shocking truth and changed their lives forever. In a small rural town, where the streets were quiet and the trees seemed to whisper ancient secrets to the wind, two paths were about to cross in a way that would change their lives forever. Laura was a vibrant young woman with an easy smile and eyes that sparkled like stars on a clear night. She carried with her an adventurous spirit and an insatiable curiosity about the world. Laura was always involved in community activities, whether helping out at the community center or participating in local festivals, where her presence brightened any event. Pedro, on the other hand, was known for his imposing presence, tall, with a deep gaze and a charismatic demeanor that drew the attention of everyone around him. He had a special talent for storytelling, and his gentle voice could captivate even the most distracted listener. Pedro also participated in city projects, helping to restore the old mill or organizing cultural events that brought the community closer together. Though they were different in many ways, Laura and Pedro shared a passion for life and a desire to contribute to their town. It was at one of these community events, during a particularly hot summer afternoon, that their paths crossed. Laura was helping organize a craft fair while Pedro was there to present a local play. She first saw him while he was on stage, with the wind playing with his hair and a smile lighting up his face. Laura, absorbed in the tasks of the fair, did not immediately notice the attention she was attracting. When Pedro finished his performance, he came down from the stage and, without hesitation, approached Laura. The conversation started with casual compliments about her work at the fair, but soon turned into an exchange of stories and dreams. Pedro was enchanted by Laura's passion for her activities and the way she spoke so enthusiastically about her future plans. Laura, in turn, was impressed by Pedro's deep thoughts and his ability to connect with people in such a genuine way. Their friendship blossomed quickly, like a garden waiting to be watered. They began to meet frequently, exploring the town and sharing their dreams and aspirations. Afternoons turned into evenings, and their meetings became more frequent. Pedro would take her for walks by the river, where they talked about the future, while Laura accompanied him in his community activities, enthusiastically supporting his projects. As time went on, their bond grew stronger and their feelings deeper. What started as a simple friendship turned into a genuine and profound love. Pedro set out to show Laura how much she meant to him, giving her small tokens of affection that demonstrated his love and admiration. Laura, in turn, found in Pedro someone who truly understood her and shared her optimistic vision for the future. The time finally came to seal their commitment. Pedro proposed to Laura in an idyllic setting, by the same river where they had shared so many conversations and dreams. He had prepared a romantic picnic with lit candles and fresh flowers, and as the sun set, he knelt and asked the question Laura had been eagerly awaiting. With tears in her eyes and a radiant smile, Laura said, "Yes." Their wedding was an intimate and joyful ceremony that reflected the love they had cultivated over time. The guests were only close friends and family, all gathered to celebrate the union of two hearts that had found each other amidst the simplicity of life. The place was decorated with wildflowers, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and soft music. The vows they exchanged were full of sincerity and promises of a bright future, pledging to stand by each other no matter what life held. After a few years of marital happiness, during which Laura and Pedro built a cozy and loving home, fate brought them an unexpected and devastating challenge. Pedro, always so active and energetic, was driving his car down a quiet road surrounded by green and blooming fields that had once been his favorite landscape. It was an ordinary day, and Pedro was heading to an important community meeting where he planned to present a project that promised to bring benefits to the town. The ceremony was a testament to the pure and true love that Laura and Pedro had built. The couple was radiant, their eyes shining with hope and happiness. That day, everyone in the small town knew that their love was something special, and the promise of a future together seemed to guarantee a life full of joy and fulfillment. Suddenly, as the sunlight reflected off the car windows, Pedro lost control on a bumpy curve. The car skidded on the wet road and crashed forcefully into a sturdy tree by the roadside. The impact was severe, and although rescuers arrived quickly, Pedro was found in critical condition. The accident caused severe spinal injuries, and the medical team did everything possible to stabilize him. When Laura received the news, her world collapsed in an instant. She was at home, making preparations for a new life project that she and Pedro had planned together. The phone rang, and when she heard the hospital doctor's voice, Laura felt a chill run down her spine. With her heart racing and her hands trembling, she knew that the life she knew was about to change forever. Laura immediately went to the hospital, her heart filled with fear and hope. She found Pedro in an emergency room with a pale face and closed eyes, surrounded by machines and tubes. Seeing her husband injured and vulnerable was a devastating blow. Laura knelt by his bed, holding his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face as she tried to find courage amid the chaos. The diagnosis was clear. Pedro had suffered a severe spinal cord injury, resulting in partial paralysis of his legs and significantly reduced mobility. The prospect of a long rehabilitation process and the need for ongoing care was overwhelming. Laura was in shock, but also determined. She knew that despite the emotional and physical impact, she needed to be the rock on which Pedro could lean. After Pedro's accident, Laura made a decision that would profoundly impact her future and that of her family. She would leave her job to dedicate herself completely to caring for her husband. The decision was not easy. Laura loved her career and had her own ambitions and dreams. However, the love and commitment she felt for Pedro outweighed everything else. She knew that to ensure he received the best possible care, she needed to be present at all times. The early moments of the morning were dedicated to her husband, Pedro. Laura carefully prepared breakfast, a ritual that involved more than just serving food. She checked Pedro's medications, adjusted his position in bed to ensure maximum comfort, and got ready to help him start the day. Pedro, still half asleep, thanked her with a weak smile, but Laura knew that words were unnecessary. Her commitment was clear in every action. After ensuring Pedro was well and ready for the day, Laura moved on to household tasks. With her body growing and her belly swelling due to pregnancy, keeping the house in order became increasingly difficult. She did everything she could to keep things clean and organized. From washing clothes to tidying up the house, every movement was made with a combination of care and effort, adapting to the new physical limitations imposed by her pregnancy. Laura felt pain in her back and legs after hours of work, but she didn't let that stop her. She took brief breaks to rest, but often found herself back at her tasks before she could truly find relief. The energy she once had was now replaced by a constant fatigue, but her willpower kept her moving. As she prepared the home for the baby's arrival, Laura dedicated time to arranging the nursery. Patiently, she organized the tiny, cute clothes, set up the crib, and decorated the room with soft, cozy themes. The anticipation of seeing the baby's face and the joy it would bring helped her overcome the exhaustion and pain. Each small detail was carefully planned, and Laura imagined the future moment when the baby would be in her arms. During the day, Laura continued to care for Pedro and handle household tasks, but there were moments when she needed a break. Medical visits became more frequent, and she adjusted her schedule to ensure she could keep up with the necessary prenatal care to ensure the health of her baby. These moments away from home, though exhausting, also served as an opportunity to escape the heavy routine and mentally prepare for what was to come. At the end of the day, when the sun set and the house was enveloped in the tranquility of night, Laura remained active, finishing the day's tasks. She prepared dinner for Pedro and often sat beside him, talking about how their day had gone and sharing small hopes for the future. Even with the accumulated fatigue, Laura was determined to maintain these moments of connection, knowing that emotional support was as crucial as physical care. Each night was a battle to find time to rest. Laura often went to bed exhausted, but with her mind full of thoughts and worries. She knew she needed rest to face the next day, but the desire to ensure everything was perfect for Pedro and the baby often prevented her from having restorative sleep. Despite all the challenges, Laura found strength in the prospect of the future. The idea of soon having a new family member and the vision of a harmonious home helped her overcome daily difficulties. She clung to these hopes, and her determination to provide the best for Pedro and the baby was a constant source of motivation. As time went on, Laura became immersed in a routine that combined care, hope, and a deep love for Pedro. Despite the daily challenges, she dedicated every moment to ensuring he received the best care possible and eagerly prepared for the arrival of their baby. However, something subtle began to disturb the peace she had worked so hard to maintain. Laura noticed the first changes in Pedro's behavior one autumn afternoon, when the leaves on the trees started to cover the ground with a golden carpet. Pedro, who had once been affectionate and attentive, was becoming increasingly distant. His gaze, which had previously shone with interest and gratitude, now seemed vacant and absorbed in his own thoughts. He was quieter, and the conversations that once flowed naturally were now filled with long periods of silence. Laura initially tried to ignore these changes, attributing them to stress or fatigue that Pedro might be experiencing. After all the years of difficulties and struggles, it was easy to imagine that he was going through a tougher time, especially with the impending arrival of the baby. However, the changes began to become more evident and more unsettling. Pedro began to isolate himself at unexpected moments. Instead of participating in daily activities, he spent more time locked in his room, often with the door closed and locked. Laura tried not to worry about these moments of solitude, but she began to feel a chill run down her spine when she noticed that he was constantly in front of the computer, writing or browsing the internet at odd hours. She couldn't see what he was doing, but the sense that something was being hidden grew every day. Small details also became concerning. Pedro, who had previously been attentive to Laura's well-being and willing to help with any pregnancy-related tasks, now seemed indifferent. He didn't participate in the preparations for the baby, and was often absent when Laura needed support. When she tried to discuss her feelings and concerns, Pedro responded with short and evasive answers, which only fueled Laura's growing sense of unease. Insecurity and fear began to haunt Laura. She spent hours reflecting on the changes, trying to find a logical and rational explanation for Pedro's behavior. Doubts began to take root, and she wondered if something was wrong in their relationship, or if he was hiding something that could devastate their lives. The idea of confronting Pedro directly made her hesitate, as the fear of being wrong and causing unnecessary conflict kept her in a state of constant agitation. Laura tried to seek advice from close friends and family, but even they, with their good intentions, couldn't offer clear answers. Some suggested that Pedro might be dealing with some form of depression or stress, something Laura considered, but Pedro's lack of communication and reserved behavior made it difficult to take concrete steps. Despite her growing suspicions, Laura made a conscious effort to maintain faith in Pedro. She remembered the affectionate and devoted man she had known and married, and the love she still felt for him was a ray of hope amid the uncertainty. Laura continued to show him affection and support, trying to give him the space and patience she believed he needed to overcome any difficulties he might be facing. Laura knew she needed some way to resolve what was happening with Pedro, but she wanted to ensure that any action taken was done with sensitivity and understanding. Each day, she struggled to balance her emotions and growing suspicions, trying to maintain harmony in the home while navigating this sea of uncertainty. Laura was increasingly worried about Pedro's strange behavior. Her instincts as a devoted wife and caregiver were on high alert, mixing concern with growing desperation. The tension she felt was palpable, manifesting in sleepless nights and days of constant anxiety. She was determined to find a solution to better understand what was happening with Pedro, but at the same time, she wanted to be careful not to invade his privacy in a disrespectful way. On a particularly overcast autumn morning, Laura decided to take a measure she hoped would be only temporary but considered necessary. She went to a local electronics store and bought a discreet security camera designed to be small and unobtrusive. The goal was to install the camera in a location that would provide a clear view of the main areas of the house without being immediately noticeable. With the camera in hand, Laura spent the morning preparing for the installation. She chose a strategic location in the living room, a central space in the house where Pedro spent most of his time during the day. At the same time, she tried to ensure that the camera was not visible or easily noticed to avoid causing unnecessary discomfort if Pedro happened to find it. Laura proceeded with the installation with caution, adjusting the camera's angle to cover the largest part of the room and ensuring she could monitor Pedro's behavior without invading his privacy. The installation process was carried out with precision and meticulous care. Laura made sure the camera was well positioned, away from private areas, and focused only on the common areas of the house. She connected the device to her smartphone, set it up to receive real-time recordings, and ensured the camera was functioning correctly. At every step, Laura battled feelings of guilt and fear that this action might be seen as a breach of trust between her and Pedro. When the camera started working, Laura felt a mix of relief and nervousness. Her intention was to use the footage to monitor the situation only while she was away, ensuring Pedro was well taken care of during the times she wasn't by his side. She hoped the measure would be brief, a temporary solution until she could better understand Pedro's behavior, and if necessary, address the situation with more clarity and openness. The first days after installing the camera were tense. Laura spent hours at home, reviewing the recordings, trying to interpret Pedro's behavior through the footage. Every small gesture and moment captured by the camera was analyzed with almost obsessive attention. Laura looked for patterns, signs of abnormal behavior, or anything that might explain what was happening with Pedro. As she reviewed the recordings, Laura noticed a few small peculiarities. Pedro seemed to spend a lot of time in the same spot, with a distant gaze, as if he were in his own world. There were moments when he spoke on the phone, but the voice was inaudible, and the words couldn't be clearly identified. Laura also observed that he frequently accessed websites and apps on the computer, which heightened her concern, as she wasn't sure exactly what he was involved in. The use of the camera, though initially a practical solution, brought with it a new set of emotional challenges. Laura began to feel even more divided between her need for information and her desire to maintain trust and privacy in her relationship. She spent hours contemplating what to do with the information she obtained and how to approach Pedro in a sensitive and respectful manner. The moral dilemma Laura faced became an additional burden on her already overloaded shoulders. She was constantly seeking answers, but also knew she needed to find a way to resolve the situation without causing further damage to their relationship. The camera had been installed with the intention of protecting Pedro and ensuring his well-being. But Laura feared that discovering this surveillance might result in an even greater shock for her husband and potentially create a new rift between them. Amidst this situation, Laura continued with her daily tasks, caring for Pedro and preparing the home for the baby's arrival. She did her best to maintain a facade of normalcy while struggling to deal with her own emotions and uncertainties. The desire to protect Pedro and ensure he was okay, even in the face of her suspicions, kept Laura motivated, even when the situation seemed almost unbearable. On a spring day, the sky was clear and blue, reflecting a sense of renewal and hope that Laura tried to keep alive amid her daily challenges. She had left the house for a routine medical appointment, a rare opportunity for her to take care of herself, while Pedro was under the watch of the security camera. Laura hoped the appointment would be quick and that she could return home before her anxiety became unbearable. Laura said goodbye to Pedro with a soft kiss on the forehead and an encouraging smile, trying to mask the anxiety she felt. She knew she needed some time to take care of her own health, and at the same time, hoped the camera would provide her with the answers she was seeking. She left the house with a mix of nervousness and hope, wishing the day would pass without surprises. While Laura was at her medical appointment, the house was silent except for the occasional sound of the wind coming through the open windows. The security camera, so carefully installed, continued recording every movement in the house, capturing the details Laura had missed when she left. When Laura returned home, her mind was preoccupied with thoughts of the appointment and the day's next steps. But as soon as she walked in, she remembered to check the camera footage, out of eager to see how Pedro had spent his time while she was away. Laura's heart raced as she accessed the footage, hoping to find something that could explain Pedro's behavior and ease her concerns. What Laura saw in the recordings left her paralyzed. The footage showed Pedro, who had seemed so fragile and dependent during daily interactions, suddenly with a different energy. He was sitting in the living room, but next to him was a woman Laura didn't recognize. The woman, with dark hair and casual clothing, spoke to Pedro with a familiarity that seemed too intimate for someone Laura didn't know. As the video progressed, Laura saw Pedro and the woman interacting more closely. The behavior they displayed was so perplexing that Laura struggled to process what she was seeing. What initially seemed like an innocent gesture was becoming something much more troubling. in a particularly unsettling scene. Pedro and the woman were in the kitchen. The woman was preparing food, and Pedro moved around her with a comfort that indicated a deep level of ease. Pedro was passing his hand along the woman's back as she reached into the cupboard. It was a casual touch, but the woman's reaction, with a smile and a look of appreciation, indicated an intimacy Laura was not used to seeing. The video showed Pedro and the woman laughing together, exchanging looks that seemed to have special meaning. Pedro appeared so relaxed and engaged, as if he were in a space where he could be completely himself. Every shared laugh and affectionate gesture added to the sense of betrayal Laura felt. The trust she had in Pedro began to crumble, as if the walls of her world were collapsing. In one of the most painful images, Pedro and the woman were sitting on the living room sofa, with Pedro leaning against her in a very intimate way. The woman was lying comfortably, with her head resting on Pedro's shoulder. They were watching a movie, but the way Pedro embraced her, and how the woman seemed to snuggle against him, indicated a kind of comfort and closeness that went beyond simple friendship. Laura couldn't believe what she was seeing. Pedro, who had been her pillar of strength and love, was now showing a level of affection for someone else that seemed completely incongruous with the image she had of him. With each scene, each touch and whisper, the betrayal became more evident and undeniable. What Laura had seen in just a few minutes seemed to dismantle years of trust and commitment she had invested in her marriage. The woman was clearly at ease, and the way Pedro treated her with affection was something Laura had never witnessed before. The scene culminated with Pedro and the woman embracing for a long time, almost as if they were a romantic couple. Pedro looked into her eyes with adoration, and in a stunning moment, they shared a gentle kiss. The image was a direct blow to Laura's heart. The kiss, though brief, was a clear sign of an emotional connection that seemed far beyond the bounds of simple friendship. Laura stopped the video, her body trembling and her eyes filling with tears. Each image felt like a punch to the stomach, and the pain of the betrayal was becoming almost unbearable. She tried to find an explanation, a justification for what she was seeing, but the evidence was there, clear and unequivocal. The sense of betrayal was deep and devastating. Laura felt completely disoriented. The man she had loved and cared for now had a behavior that destroyed the trust and security she had built in their relationship. The images were ruining her view of her marriage, and the reality of the betrayal unfolded before her eyes in a way that seemed irreparable. Sitting in the darkness of the room, Laura knew she needed to confront Pedro with what she had discovered, but the gravity of the situation left her paralyzed. Each scene from the video seemed to confirm her worst fears, and she struggled to find the strength to face the devastating truth she had just uncovered. The trust that had once been the foundation of their relationship had been completely destroyed, and Laura was now in the midst of an emotional storm, struggling to understand and deal with what this betrayal meant. Laura climbed the stairs with determined steps, the sound of her shoes echoing in the empty hallways. Each step felt like a prelude to the confrontation about to take place. As she entered the living room, she found Pedro sitting on the sofa, seemingly relaxed, as if nothing was amiss. But Laura knew that normalcy was an illusion, and reality was about to reveal itself. Pedro looked up and greeted Laura with a welcoming smile, but upon seeing her face, his smile faded into an expression of concern. "Laura, you're back already?" he asked, trying to mask the tension in his voice. Laura took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but her emotions were bubbling to the surface. She walked over to the sofa, took the remote control from the coffee table without ceremony, and turned on the security camera footage she had just reviewed. "Pedro, we need to talk about what I saw today," she said, her voice trembling with anger and pain. Pedro furrowed his brow and looked at the screen with a confused expression. As the images began to play, Pedro's face changed from one of discomfort to full comprehension of what was unfolding. He knew the situation was unraveling, and there was no way to escape the evidence displayed before them. "Laura, I can explain," Pedro started, his voice tinged with desperation. "I never wanted you to see this. I felt so alone. And that woman, she's just a friend. She offered me emotional support when I was going through a really tough time." Laura looked at him with disbelief. "Emotional support? Pedro, I saw the video. I saw you laughing, touching her, and even hugging her. What I saw doesn't look like simple support from a friend." Pedro tried to find the right words, but each attempt at justification only seemed to deepen the wound. "I was desperate, Laura. I know what I did was wrong, but she was there for me when I needed it the most. I didn't want to hurt you, but I felt so abandoned and lost. I didn't know how to cope." Laura felt a lump in her throat as tears began to stream down her face. "You don't understand, Pedro. I gave up my job, my life outside this house to take care of you. I did all this for you, and now I see you giving yourself to someone else, while I was struggling to keep everything running here." Pedro reached out, placing his hand on Laura's arm, but she quickly pulled away, her gaze fixed and wounded. "I know that nothing I say can change what you saw," he continued, his voice breaking. "I feel so terrible for hurting you, and I understand if you can't forgive me." Laura struggled to maintain her composure. The sense of betrayal was profound, and the pain overwhelming. "Pedro, it's not just about what you did. It's about the trust that was destroyed. I don't know if I can ever forget this. I thought we were a team, that we faced everything together, but now I feel like I've been deceived all along." Pedro looked at Laura with deep sadness and regret. "I know, Laura. I understand that what I did was a terrible mistake. I don't know if I can fix this, but I'm willing to try. I just ask that you give me a chance to show that I can change." Laura took a deep breath, trying to process the conflicting emotions. "Pedro, I don't know what to do now. I need time to think. I need to understand if I can truly forgive and rebuild the trust that's been shattered." Pedro nodded slowly, his expression of acceptance showing he understood how difficult it would be to regain Laura's trust. He knew that the path to recovery would be long and filled with challenges. Laura, for her part, knew she would face an equally difficult journey, marked by doubts and insecurities. As Laura withdrew to reflect, the silence in the room seemed to deepen. What was once a shared home now brimmed with uncertainty, and Laura's decision about the future felt like an immense burden she would have to carry alone, at least for now. The pain and disappointment were still fresh, and the road to reconciliation would be a monumental task for both Laura and Pedro. After many debates and tears, Laura ultimately made the painful decision to end her relationship with Pedro. The process was unbearable and fraught with tension. Every conversation and argument seemed to amplify the pain already accumulating in her heart. Pedro's betrayal was not just a personal hurt, but the shattering of a deep trust built over years of companionship and sacrifice. The house, once a haven of love and security, was now steeped in a heavy, oppressive silence. Laura moved through the rooms with the weight of decisions that needed to be made, and the new reality unfolding before her. Her daily life became a routine of mourning and reflection, each corner of the house a reminder of what she had lost. Laura often sat in her room, looking out the window, lost in thoughts about the future. The pain was not only in the betrayal itself, but in the overwhelming sense of having been deceived while struggling to hold her family together. Each tear she shed seemed to reflect her frustration and sadness about the situation she faced. The decision to end the relationship was not made lightly. Laura spent sleepless nights contemplating the implications and consequences. She reflected on the effort and love she had invested in Pedro, the promises made, and the family disintegrating before her eyes. It was a painful shock to accept that her efforts to preserve the relationship had been in vain. Laura spoke with Pedro one last time. The dialogue filled with emotion and frustration. "Pedro, I've tried in every possible way, but I can't continue like this. I've done everything in my power to care for you, to keep our family together, and now I feel betrayed and powerless." Pedro tried to argue, his tone filled with regret, but Laura knew there were no words that could mend the pain she felt. "Laura, I understand your pain. I regret everything that happened. I just ask that you consider giving us a chance to make things right." Laura shook her head, tears in her eyes and an unwavering determination in her gaze. "It's not just about what happened. It's about how I feel now, the trust that was destroyed, and the future I need to build for myself and our child. I need to move on." With the decision made, Laura began to prepare for a new life as a single mother. The following weeks were a whirlwind of changes. She dedicated herself to preparing the home for the baby's arrival, lovingly arranging the nursery. Every detail was a testament to her commitment to the future she was about to face. Alone. After the painful decision to end her relationship with Pedro, Laura embarked on a new chapter of her life with quiet determination. She had chosen a path full of challenges, but also hope and opportunities to start anew. With her newborn in her arms, Laura began to rebuild her life, day by day. Laura's new home was a small but cozy apartment. Each room was carefully prepared to welcome the baby. She had chosen soft colors for the nursery, with a white crib, simple furniture, and adorable star-patterned curtains. The room was filled with the fresh scent of lavender and new beginnings, offering a tranquil refuge for Laura and her child. The first weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. Laura dealt with the exhaustion of sleepless nights and the constant responsibility of caring for her baby. But there was something profoundly rewarding in every smile and every small progress her child made. She spent hours rocking him in her arms, whispering soothing words as tears of frustration and relief mixed together. There was a raw beauty in motherhood that was helping her find a new perspective on life. Laura relied on the unwavering support of her friends and family. Her mother in particular was a constant presence, offering practical and emotional help. She visited regularly, bringing homemade food and offering a shoulder to lean on. These visits became a lifeline for Laura, providing moments of connection and a reminder that she was not alone. Laura's friends, who were initially surprised by the situation, offered immense support. They helped in many ways, from providing company on trips to the park to assisting with household chores. This support was a constant reminder that Laura had cultivated meaningful relationships over the years, and those relationships were now manifesting in times of need. Rebuilding her life was not just about creating a new physical home, but also about finding a new identity and purpose. Laura began to explore interests she had set aside, such as gardening and reading, Each small activity she resumed became a symbol of her recovery and her ability to thrive amidst adversity. Motherhood brought new strength to Laura. She discovered that her love for her child was an inexhaustible source of motivation and courage. Every milestone in her baby's development, from his first smile to his first steps, was a personal victory that gave her hope and reaffirmed her belief in a better future. The challenges she faced, such as balancing work and caring for her baby, were transforming her into a stronger and more resilient woman. Laura also started making new plans for the future. She considered returning to work, but with a different focus, perhaps exploring opportunities that would allow her to better balance her responsibilities as a mother and a professional. She thought about ways to create a balanced and fulfilling life, where she could provide security and love to her child while pursuing her own dreams. The process of rebuilding was painful and full of challenges, but Laura found strength in every step she took. She knew there was still much to face, but she was determined to move forward with an open heart and a focused mind. The experience, though traumatizing, had transformed Laura into a stronger, more independent woman. She was no longer just a wife or a caregiver. She had become a mother, a fighter, and a survivor. Years had passed since Laura made the difficult decision to end her relationship with Pedro. The pain and struggle of that time were still present in her memory, but over time, life had moved forward, and she had found a new path for herself. Now, looking back, Laura felt a deep mix of sadness and gratitude as she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. On a quiet morning, Laura sat in her garden, a space she had carefully cultivated over the years. The garden was a perfect metaphor for her life. After many attempts and patience, colorful flowers and plants had begun to bloom, creating a vibrant and lively environment. She watched her child play with a small swing, and his laughter filled the air with contagious joy. The sun shone gently, creating a serene and promising atmosphere. Laura felt a surge of gratitude as she thought about how her life had improved. Every challenge and tear had contributed to the strong and resilient woman she had become. She had overcome moments of uncertainty and difficulty, and the result was a life full of new opportunities and personal achievements. Looking back, Laura knew the road had not been easy. There were moments of loneliness and doubt, but she had found strength in the small victories of everyday life. The support from friends and family, the ability to create a loving home for her child, and the determination to rebuild her life were crucial to her recovery. She remembered the sleepless nights caring for her baby and struggling to balance her responsibilities. Those nights seemed endless, but they were also filled with unconditional love and a deep commitment to her child. Over time, Laura had managed to find balance, allowing herself moments of rest and self-care. What once seemed like an uncertain horizon was now filled with new possibilities. Laura had dedicated herself to exploring new interests and opportunities. She had rekindled her passion for gardening and even started working on a project of small workshops for other mothers, sharing her experiences and offering support to those going through similar situations. Her child, now a happy and curious little boy, was a major source of joy. He had grown up in a loving and stable environment, and Laura felt immense pride seeing him become such a wonderful person. The afternoons at the park, bedtime stories, and small adventures together were moments Laura deeply cherished. Laura had also cultivated new friendships and deepened her bonds with family. She was grateful for the constant support she had received over the years, and these strengthened relationships were a constant reminder that, despite the difficulties, she was not alone. Family gatherings, conversations, and shared moments were a testament to the strength of the community surrounding them. In time, Laura felt ready to embrace the future with a new perspective. Every challenge overcome had contributed to a renewed sense of hope and confidence. The future seemed promising, and Laura was excited about the new opportunities on the horizon. She knew that life would still present challenges, but she was prepared to face them with the same strength and courage that had helped her overcome past difficulties. Laura was determined to continue growing and evolving, to create a future full of possibilities, and to embrace new beginnings with enthusiasm. As the sun began to set, Laura sat on the garden bench with her child by her side and allowed herself a moment of reflection and peace. She looked at the sky, where the evening colors blended with shades of orange and pink, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey she had embarked on had transformed her and brought her to a place of true happiness and fulfillment. With a serene smile, Laura looked to the future with hope. She was ready to continue her journey, confident that the challenges she had overcome were just a part of a larger and richer story. Life was full of new opportunities and possibilities, and Laura was ready to embrace them with open arms, her heart full of hope and love.